Chance Encounters. The monsoon arrived in Mumbai with theatrical timing, turning the afternoon sky into a canvas of angry grays. Naveen Kapoor hurried along the crowded street, cursing himself for forgetting his umbrella. At 32, the environmental scientist should have known better, especially after spending years studying weather patterns across coastal India. When the downpour intensified, Naveen ducked into the nearest shelter, a small cafe tucked between two larger buildings. A hand-painted sign swung above the door, Whispers Cafe. The warm, cinnamon-scented air enveloped him as he stepped inside, shaking droplets from his jacket. "You look like you could use this," came a voice, musical and slightly accented. Naveen looked up to find a woman extending a steaming mug toward him. Her eyes, amber-flecked with gold, seemed to hold stories he immediately wanted to hear. "Thank you," he said, accepting the unexpected offering. "I wasn't planning on becoming part of the monsoon today." "Nobody ever plans to get caught in storms," she replied with a knowing smile. "I'm Zara Mirza. This is my place." The cafe was unlike any Naveen had seen in this part of the city. Walls lined with bookshelves, vintage photographs of mountains, and forests and mismatched furniture that somehow created perfect harmony. Like its owner, it felt both welcoming and enigmatic. Over the next hour, as rain lashed against the windows, Naveen found himself sharing stories about his work with the Western Ghats Conservation Project. Zara listened intently, asking questions that revealed her own knowledge of environmental issues. "You don't meet many cafe owners who can discuss deforestation impact models," Naveen observed. Zara's smile faltered slightly. "I had another life before this. In Kashmir." The way she said it, with finality, told Naveen not to press further. He respected the boundary, changing the subject to safer territory. When the rain finally subsided, Naveen reluctantly prepared to leave. "Your cafe saved me today. I'd like to come back if that's all right." "We're open every day except Mondays," Zara replied, her professional tone softening as she added, "I'm usually here in the afternoons." Over the following weeks, Whispers Cafe became Naveen's second office. He'd bring his laptop, working through environmental impact reports while stealing glances at Zara as she moved gracefully between tables. Sometimes they'd talk during quiet periods about books, music, his childhood in Delhi, the changing landscapes of India. But whenever conversation drifted toward her past, Zara would gently redirect. One evening, as Naveen helped Zara close the cafe, their hands brushed while reaching for the same teacup. The electricity between them was undeniable. On impulse, he asked her to dinner. "Not as cafe owner and customer," he clarified, "just as Zara and Naveen." Her hesitation was brief but noticeable, a shadow crossing her features before she nodded. "I'd like that." Their first date led to more: walks along Marine Drive, a photography exhibition, cooking dinner at his apartment. Zara slowly revealed pieces of herself: her love for poetry, her knowledge of medicinal plants, her talent for capturing beauty through her camera lens. Yet Naveen sensed she kept the most significant parts hidden, locked away like treasures too precious or too painful to share. "Everyone has secrets," she said once, when he gently questioned her reluctance to talk about family. "Some are meant to protect others, not just ourselves." As monsoon season gave way to autumn, Naveen realized he was falling in love with a woman who remained partly a mystery. But he believed that love meant accepting someone completely, known parts and unknown alike. What he couldn't have imagined was how severely that belief would soon be tested. Fragile trust. Autumn in Mumbai brought cooler evenings and a gentle golden light that transformed Whispers Cafe into a haven of amber shadows. 3 months into their relationship, Naveen found himself increasingly drawn into Zara's world, even as parts of it remained veiled in secrecy. "You've never shown me where you live," Naveen mentioned one evening as they walked along Juhu Beach, waves lapping gently at their feet. Zara's fingers tightened around his. My apartment is tiny, barely more than a bedroom above the cafe. Nothing like your spacious place with that beautiful balcony. It was a deflection, one of many Naveen had grown accustomed to. Still, their connection deepened daily. Zara had begun helping with his conservation work, using her remarkable photography skills to document the endangered flora in Maharashtra's rapidly shrinking forests. These images are extraordinary, Dr. Rajesh Sharma, Naveen's supervisor, remarked during a presentation. Your partner has an exceptional eye for detail. The praise brought a flush to Zara's cheeks, one of the rare times Naveen had seen her discomfited by attention. Later, as they celebrated the successful presentation at his apartment, Naveen proposed she join their next field expedition to the Western Ghats. I can't, she replied quickly, then softened her refusal. I can't leave the cafe for that long. Maybe another time. That night, as Zara slept beside him, Naveen noticed a faded scar along her shoulder blade, one he'd glimpsed before, but never mentioned. In sleep, her face lost its careful composure, sometimes tightening as though confronting unseen threats. Naveen gently traced the curve of her cheek, wondering what battles she fought in dreams. Their relationship existed in a delicate balance of intimacy and distance. Zara never answered calls in his presence, kept no social media accounts, and spoke of no friends beyond casual acquaintances at the cafe. When pressed about her past, she would share fragments, growing up near Srinagar, studying botany briefly at university, traveling across northern India before settling in Mumbai 3 years ago. Sometimes I think you're running from something, Naveen said once, trying to keep his tone light. Zara's response was unexpectedly raw. Everyone runs from something, Naveen. The question is whether what you're running toward matters more. The morning his conservation project received a major government grant, Naveen rushed to Whisper's Cafe, eager to share the news. The cafe was unusually busy, and Zara greeted him with professional warmth rather than personal affection. Only, after the lunch crowd dispersed, did she embrace him properly? I'm so proud of you, she whispered against his neck. Your work will make a real difference. That evening, she surprised him by suggesting they celebrate at her apartment. It's not much, but it's mine, she said, leading him up a narrow staircase behind the cafe. The small space was indeed modest, but filled with careful touches. Potted herbs along the windowsill, walls adorned with her photographs, bookshelves, overflowing with volumes on botany, poetry, and Kashmir's ecology. It felt both like a sanctuary and a temporary shelter, ready to be abandoned if necessary. As Naveen examined a particularly striking photograph of a Himalayan landscape, he noticed a small wooden box tucked behind several books. Zara quickly moved to his side, subtly shifting position to block his view. I made dinner, she said, drawing him toward the tiny kitchen area. Nothing fancy, but I remembered you mentioned missing your mother's Rogan Josh. The meal was perfect, spiced, exactly as he'd described his mother's recipe. As they ate, Zara seemed more relaxed than he'd ever seen her, even sharing a childhood story about getting lost in her grandfather's apple orchard. You should talk about Kashmir more often, Naveen said. Your eyes light up when you do. Zara's smile dimmed slightly. Some memories are better left in the past. Later, as they lay together in her narrow bed, rain pattering against the windows, Zara traced patterns on his chest and whispered, I want to trust you with everything, Naveen. I'm trying. I can wait, he replied, kissing her forehead. Whatever it is, whenever you're ready. The next morning, Naveen woke alone. A note on the pillow read, Gone to get fresh bread. Back soon. He stretched contentedly, taking in Zara's space in daylight. A notification chimed on his phone, a text from Dr. Sharma requesting an urgent meeting about the grant allocation. Rising to dress, Naveen accidentally knocked over a stack of books. As he knelt to gather them, the wooden box he'd noticed yesterday fell open, spilling its contents. Among them was an identification card with Zara's photograph, but a different name: Samira Mirza. Beside it lay newspaper clippings about wildlife trafficking arrests in Kashmir and a small worn photograph of Zara standing beside a tall, imposing man, his arm possessively around her shoulders. Naveen was still staring at these items when the apartment door opened. Zara stood frozen in the doorway, bread clutched in her hands, eyes fixed on the scattered contents of her secret box. The silence between them stretched taut as a wire, vibrating with unspoken questions. Shattered illusions. "His name is Dawood," Zara said, her voice barely audible over the afternoon traffic filtering through the cafe's closed windows. They sat in whispers after hours, the chairs stacked, the lights dimmed. "Dawood Mirza, my husband." The word hung between them like a physical barrier. Naveen's hands tightened around his untouched cup of chai. "Husband," he repeated, trying to keep his voice steady. "Not ex-husband." Zara shook her head, eyes downcast. "We married 6 years ago in Srinagar. I was 23, studying botany. He was 34, charismatic, respected, a businessman with connections throughout the region." She explained how she'd been drawn to Dawood's apparent passion for preserving Kashmir's natural heritage. His import-export business specialized in botanical specimens and traditional medicines. Only after marriage did she discover the truth. His legitimate business was a front for wildlife trafficking operations stretching from the Himalayas to Southeast Asia. When I confronted him, Zara's fingers unconsciously traced the scar on her arm. "He made it clear that I was no longer his wife but his possession. My knowledge of plants and forests made me useful. For 2 years, she was forced to help identify rare species and their locations. When she attempted to contact authorities, Dawood's political connections ensured her accusations went nowhere. Instead, she became a virtual prisoner in their home. I escaped during a business trip to Delhi. Changed my name, my appearance, moved constantly for months before settling here." Her eyes finally met Naveen's. "I chose Mumbai because it's where you can disappear in plain sight." Naveen processed this revelation in stunned silence. The woman he loved had been living a carefully constructed half-truth, balancing between hiding her past and building something real with him. "Why didn't you divorce him? Report him to federal authorities rather than local ones?" "Divorce requires contact," Zara said bitterly, "and he has friends in unexpected places. I've sent anonymous tips to wildlife enforcement agencies, but without hard evidence." She shrugged helplessly. "Mostly, I've tried to stay invisible." As twilight deepened outside, Naveen struggled with conflicting emotions: sympathy for Zara's ordeal, anger at her deception, and a dawning fear of what this meant for their future. "I understand if this changes everything," Zara said, misinterpreting his silence. "I've put you in danger simply by being close to you." Before Naveen could respond, the cafe door rattled. They both turned to see a silhouette through the frosted glass. Zara paled, instinctively moving behind the counter. "We're closed," Naveen called, moving protectively toward the door. The rattling stopped, replaced by a smooth, cultured voice. "I believe my wife is inside. Family emergency." Zara's sharp intake of breath confirmed what Naveen already knew. Dawood had found her. The months of caution, of guarded privacy, had ultimately failed. "Call the police," Naveen whispered urgently to Zara, who stood paralyzed behind the counter. "That won't be necessary," said Dawood as the lock clicked open. He apparently had a key. "Family matters should remain private, don't you think?" The man who entered moved with fluid confidence. Tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, Dawood Mirza exuded the polished charm of old money and political connections. Only his eyes, cold and calculating, betrayed the predator beneath. Samira, he said, using Zara's real name with deliberate emphasis. You've built quite a charming life here. His gaze swept dismissively over Naveen, complete with local companionship. How did you find me? Zara asked, her voice stronger than Naveen expected. Dawood smiled thinly. You made an impression with those photographs for the Western Ghats Conservation Project. Your talent was always distinctive. He adjusted his cufflinks casually. Imagine my surprise seeing my wife's work credited under a false name. The realization hit Naveen like a physical blow. His own success had exposed Zara. The project's publicity, the government grant announcement, her photographs prominently featured in environmental publications. What do you want? Naveen demanded, positioning himself between Dawood and Zara. Simply to reclaim what's mine, Dawood replied, his hand sliding inside his jacket to reveal the gleam of a pistol. My wife, and certain documents she took when she so rudely departed our home. I didn't take anything, Zara protested. I just wanted to escape. The ledger, Samira. Dawood's pleasant facade slipped momentarily. The client list. Return them, and perhaps your friend need not suffer consequences. Naveen felt the situation spiraling beyond control. Outside, he noticed a black SUV with tinted windows, idling across the street. Dawood hadn't come alone. There is no ledger here, Naveen said firmly. And Zara, Samira, isn't going anywhere with you. Dawood's laugh was soft but menacing. Such nobility, but you're involved in something far beyond your understanding, Dr. Kapoor. This isn't about a marriage dispute. It's about international interests worth millions. The implied threat hung in the air as Dawood raised his phone, apparently ready, to summon his waiting associates. In that moment, Naveen understood that the life he and Zara had been building together might end here, not gradually through broken trust, but violently at the hands of a man who viewed them both as obstacles to eliminate. Healing waters. 18 months later, rain fell gently on the red-tiled roofs of a coastal village in Kerala. Naveen stood on the veranda of a modest research station, watching fishing boats return to harbor as afternoon light gilded the Arabian Sea. The Western Ghats Marine Conservation Initiative, his initiative, had established its headquarters here, far from Mumbai's urban sprawl. Dr. Kapoor, a young research assistant, approached with a stack of marine survey reports. The local Fishermen's Council has approved our proposed protected zones. They're waiting to meet you at the community center. Naveen nodded, turning from the sea with a smile that came more easily these days. Life had found a new rhythm, purpose-driven, community-focused, and mostly peaceful. The trial of Dawood Mirza had concluded 6 months earlier. His wildlife trafficking network had unraveled rapidly once international authorities became involved, revealing connections to illegal arms dealing and terrorist financing. Sentenced to 20 years in a maximum security prison, his empire dismantled. Dawood had lost everything his ambition had built. Samira's testimony had been crucial to the conviction. She had appeared in court behind a screen, her identity protected even as her voice condemned the man who had once controlled her life. Afterward, she had disappeared into the witness protection program. At least that was what most people believed. After the community meeting, Naveen followed a familiar path along the shoreline until he reached a small cottage nestled among palm trees. A woman sat on its porch, photographing a family of otters playing near the water's edge. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with natural highlights from days spent in the sun, and she answered to a different name. But when she turned to greet him, her smile was unmistakably hers. The fisherman agreed to everything, Naveen reported, joining her on the porch steps. Even the seasonal no-catch zones. Kiran, the name Samira had chosen for her new life, set down her camera. That's because you approached them as partners rather than adversaries. You've always understood that conservation must include the people who depend on these waters. Their journey to this quiet existence had been neither simple nor straightforward. When Inspector Deshmukh had presented the witness protection option, they had instead proposed an alternative, a limited protection arrangement allowing Samira to assume a new identity while remaining connected to her testimony and to Naveen. "I won't disappear completely again," she had insisted to the skeptical inspector. "Running didn't solve anything the first time. I need to face this. Finish it." The compromise had required careful negotiation. Samira would testify, then relocate under a new identity to a monitored location. Naveen, after completing his obligations with the Mumbai Conservation Project, would establish a new research initiative in the same region, ostensibly unconnected to her. Their relationship would remain undisclosed to all but a few trusted officials. "You understand the risks," Inspector Deshmukh had warned. Even with Dawood imprisoned, his associates might seek retribution. They had understood but chosen this path anyway, a middle ground between complete separation and reckless exposure. Now, as twilight softened the landscape, Naveen took Kiran's hand. "I've been thinking about what you said last week, about feeling trapped in another kind of hiding." She nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Some days I wonder if I'll ever truly be free. Different name, limited contact with the outside world, always looking over my shoulder." "What if we stop hiding?" Naveen suggested quietly. "Not immediately, but gradually. The conservation work is gaining international recognition. We could leverage that, establish educational programs abroad, perhaps. New Zealand, Costa Rica, places far beyond Dawood's influence." Kiran considered this, the possibility of a future without shadows. The authorities would need to approve. "I've already spoken with Inspector Deshmukh. She thinks after another year, with good behavior continuing to reduce Dawood's sentence, international relocation might be possible." He squeezed her hand, gently. "We could build something permanent, Kiran, under names we choose, not ones assigned to us." That evening, they walked along the shore as stars emerged above the sea. The path hadn't been easy. Trust, once broken, had required painstaking reconstruction, honest conversations, painful admissions, gradual reconciliation. There had been setbacks, nightmares that woke Kiran screaming, Naveen's occasional flashes of doubt, the constant vigilance required by their arrangement. Yet something profound had emerged from the crucible of their experience, a relationship tested by fire, tempered by truth, and ultimately strengthened by shared purpose. "I've been documenting something," Kiran said, leading Naveen to a tidal pool sheltered by rocks. In its clear waters, coral polyps had begun forming a small reef, an impossibility just years ago in these overfished waters. Life returning. Resilience. Naveen watched the delicate creatures sway in the gentle current. Nature forgives what we've taken, if given the chance. "People can too," Kiran replied softly. As moonlight silvered the water around them, Naveen realized they had created something rare and precious, not despite their challenges, but because of them. Their story hadn't followed the easy path of fairy tales. Instead, it had traversed the complicated terrain of human frailty, courage, and redemption. "When we leave here," Naveen said, "whatever names we use, whatever place we choose, remember this moment. This is who we really are." Kiran leaned against him, her head finding its familiar place on his shoulder. "Two people who found each other in a storm," she whispered, "and chose to weather it together." Around them, the sea continued its eternal rhythm against the shore, washing away, renewing, healing. Like their love, it had survived turbulence and found its way to calmer waters, forever changed but ultimately strengthened by the journey. The Reckoning. Time seemed suspended in the tense atmosphere of Whispers Cafe. DeWood's finger hovered over his phone, ready to summon his men. Naveen's mind raced, cataloging their limited options. The back exit led to an alley with no throughway. The streets outside were emptying as evening descended. "The ledger doesn't exist anymore," Zara suddenly announced, her voice steady despite her pallor. "I scanned the pages and encrypted the files. If anything happens to me or Naveen, they automatically go to enforcement agencies worldwide." Naveen struggled to keep his expression neutral, recognizing her desperate bluff. DeWood narrowed his eyes, assessing her claim. "You always were cleverer than I gave you credit for," he said, lowering his phone slightly. "But we both know you lack the technical expertise for such arrangements." "People change in 3 years," Zara countered. "I found friends with the necessary skills." A muscle twitched in Dawood's jaw, the first crack in his composed exterior. "Where are these files now?" "Safe," Zara replied. "Release us, divorce me properly, and you'll never hear from me again." The files remained secured. The negotiation had bought them precious seconds. Through the cafe's windows, Naveen noticed a patrol car slowly cruising down the street, part of the increased security following recent festival celebrations. Their salvation might be just outside, if only they could signal for help. Subtly shifting position, Naveen's hand found the light. "Switch near the counter." With one fluid movement, he flipped the cafe's lights on and off repeatedly, an international distress signal that he prayed the officers would recognize. DeWood caught the movement too late. "What do you think you're—" The patrol car's lights flashed in response, and it quickly pulled to the curb. DeWood's composure fractured completely. He raised his pistol, pointing it directly at Naveen. "You've made a serious mistake!" he snarled, backing toward the door while keeping the gun trained on them. "This isn't over. The files, Samira, or your scientist won't live to see his precious forests again." With that threat lingering in the air, DeWood slipped out the side entrance just as the police officers approached the main door. The black SUV across the street pulled away with a squeal of tires. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of police statements, temporary protective, custody, and revelations. Zara, now using her legal name, Samira, provided authorities with everything she knew about DeWood's operations. Though she possessed no physical ledger, her detailed knowledge of his trafficking routes, contacts, and methods proved invaluable. "You were right about one thing," Naveen told her, as they sat in a sparse, safe house arranged by the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. "I didn't truly understand what I was getting involved in." Samira looked at him with tired eyes. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but the more real we became, the more impossible it seemed. How do you tell someone you love that you've brought danger into their life simply by being in it?" The word love hung between them, the first time either had spoken it aloud. Inspector Priya Deshmukh, the officer assigned to their case, interrupted any response Naveen might have made. In her late 40s, with steel-gray hair and sharper eyes, she had approached their situation with efficient professionalism. "We've coordinated with Interpol and Kashmir authorities," she informed them, setting down a file folder. "Dawood Mirza's assets are being frozen pending investigation. His known associates are under surveillance." "It won't be enough," Samira said quietly. "His network is too extensive, his influence too deeply embedded." Inspector Deshmukh's expression remained impassive. "Perhaps, but we've received an interesting development from the Financial Intelligence Unit. It seems your husband has been financing more than wildlife trafficking. There are terrorism connections, and that changes everything." The revelation sent a chill through the room. What had begun as a personal confrontation now had national security implications. "We need your continued cooperation," the inspector continued, addressing Samira directly. "Complete testimony, identification of associates, potentially appearing in court." "She'd be exposing herself completely," Naveen protested. "He already threatened her life, our lives." "Which is why we're offering witness protection," Inspector Deshmukh replied. New identities, relocation, possibly international. The implications crashed over Naveen. Samira might disappear again, this time permanently, erasing not only her past but their shared present. Later, alone in the safe house's small kitchen, Naveen finally confronted the question that had been haunting him since Dawood's appearance. Was any of it real? He asked Samira. Us, I mean. Or was I just part of your cover, the environmental scientist who could provide legitimacy, connections, a shield against discovery? Samira flinched as though he'd struck her. How can you ask that? Because I don't know who you are, Naveen replied, his voice breaking. Zara, Samira, whoever you are, I fell in love with someone who doesn't fully exist. Everything I shared with you was real, she whispered fiercely. My feelings, my dreams, who I am beneath the names and circumstances, those were never lies. I didn't plan to love you, Naveen. It was the most dangerous thing I could have done. Morning brought new complications. Intelligence reports indicated Dawood had fled Mumbai but left operatives behind, watching, waiting. The case against him was building, but so was the danger. You have 24 hours to decide about witness protection, Inspector Deshmukh told them. After that, we cannot guarantee your safety outside our program. As the inspector left, Naveen and Samira faced each other across an unbridgeable divide, not just of trust betrayed, but of futures irreconcilably altered. Whatever choice they made, the life they had begun to build together was already lost, shattered by the weight of secrets too long kept and truths revealed too late.